Good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, February the 21st. I'm Councillor Chad Rintoul. I'd like to welcome my committee colleagues here this evening. We also have Councillor Terry O'Keefe, who's a committee member, joining us electronically. Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. I'd like to start off this evening's meeting by respectfully acknowledging that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the WSÁNEĆ people. We have an agenda to approve this evening, and I'll note that there are some late items to item 7B on the agenda. We received correspondence from Bert Robeland and Helen Watt, from Mr. Tony Archer, Ms. Gillian Archer, Kelly Smith, and those items have all been received and presented to committee members in advance, and have been added to the agenda under item 7B. And so with that, I will just speak briefly to process this evening. So I will be calling on an opportunity for public participation at the start of the meeting, and at that time any member in attendance is welcome to approach the podium to speak. However, if you're here to speak specifically to one of the agenda items, I will also be calling for an opportunity for members of the public to speak after the specific presentations on those items. So if you're here to speak specifically regarding one of the items, you'll get that second opportunity. And so with that introduction, I will pause and look for an opportunity for committee to approve the agenda as amended.
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Next item, which Councillor Garnett has reminded me, 5A, is the regular Committee of the Whole minutes. We're looking to adopt those.
Move to approve or accept.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any omissions, comments on those minutes? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you. First call for public participation, which I skipped over. Boy, Scott, I was with you. I meant to pause and give the public an opportunity if there was something not in the agenda they wanted to speak to. I gauged that we're all here to speak to items later in the agenda, but I will circle back and pause and see if there's anyone who wants to speak to any item. For a third and final time, seeing none, thank you. I will now move to item 7A, which is a development variance permit application number DV100331 at 10273 Cleveland Road. And we have a presenter this evening. I'll call on Mr. Alistair Beck to come forward, please. And we'll just pause. Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'd like to recuse myself from this presentation. I have a potential non-pecuniary interest, conflict of interest in this, as my residence is across the street from the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just look to staff when we're concluded with this item, if we can recall the mayor back into committee chambers, please. So, Mr. Beck, you have the floor for 10 minutes. If you just introduce yourself and turn on the microphone, please.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The application for extending the garage comes about for a couple of reasons. The most important one is that our house has lots of nice big rooms, but not a whole lot of storage. So we've created a storage area within the garage. But as a consequence of that, we don't have now a full double garage. And a couple of years ago, we were considering moving and selling, and the agent at the time said it's not essential, but kind of desirable if you have a double garage. So we've abandoned the idea of moving, but sometime in the future, maybe we still want to sell. And we thought it would be a very good idea to look at the merits and the costs and the opportunities to extend the garage. So we got an architect to draw up a plan to show how that might look. The principal concern from the council's point of view is that our lot is a rather peculiar shaped one, and extending it by the 3 meters that we have in mind would result in infringing the clearance, the side clearances that are covered by the current requirements. So we submitted that to the planning people, who have prepared a report, which is included in the agenda here. I don't think I need to speak to it, except that the planners considered that the infringements were acceptable in the major ones. For example, the areas of the land and the areas of the building. There's no compromise. So the other concern then is the sort of the visual effect for our neighbours, and so we've been around pretty well all of them and shown them what we plan to do and what it would look like. We've done a bit of photoshopping to show what we think it would look like, and the reaction has been one of complete indifference. So we would like to now approach the council to get the approval of the council to the report and our desire to extend the garage. I don't know whether anybody else has anything to say.
Well, thank you, Mr. Beck. What I'll do is pause and see if there's any member this evening attending, if they have any questions for you, and then I'll yield and turn to committee. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this project, or any questions for the applicant? A third and final call. Any participants would like to speak to Mr. Beck? Seeing none, I'll now turn to our actually, I think I was going to go to staff first. No, let's go to Mr. Beck. We'll go to committee to ask questions of Mr. Beck and his project. If there are none, then we'll turn to staff for the overview, and we'll deliberate on the recommendation. Mr. Garnett, Councillor Garnett, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Beck. I'm just out of curiosity. I know I spoke with you at your house the other day. You mentioned just the garage. So is it your intent not to have the patio enclosure move forward as well? Have you guys decided not to go with that? Because the report
I'm
speaks to
sorry.
both.
I have a problem with hearing.
No worries. You mentioned just the garage, but in the report, and there was also the covered patio at the front. So are you not intending to go ahead with that?
I have to admit, they called it a patio. Actually, it's the path up to
Yeah.
to the front door, and then when they move they extend it down, the roof will extend over the path to the front door, and we also had in mind, because the road, the garage sticking out, it's the access to the main front door isn't quite so obvious. We probably put in an arbor arch there as well, just to be as a bit of an entry, and that'll involve sticking in a post. And so the surveyors showed, okay, there will be a post sitting in the ground here.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garnett. Any other questions from committee members? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Beck. You can have a seat, and we will shortly deliberate on the recommendation that's before.
Okay, thank you for your attention. Thank you.
I'll now turn to staff. I see Ms. Verhagen is here. Anything to add with respect to this application, Ms. Verhagen?
Thank you. Good evening. Only to clarify, the requested variances to the zoning bylaw are to reduce the minimum front setback and the minimum exterior side setback in the R2 zone. That's a single and two family residential zone. And that's as described in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Verhagen. Turning to committee members' questions of staff. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the drawing, and I see that the side setback, is that simply because the current existing side yard is already within the setback? And so now they're building an extension, because it looks all in line, and like where it is doesn't look like it's going to be any closer, so it's the existing house is already within it.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Duncan, yeah, that is the case. The existing house is at a 2.8 meter setback, whereas the current zoning bylaw requires a 3 meter setback. So to continue that straight line, they need a variance to reduce to 2.8.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking again to committee colleagues, if anyone has any questions of staff. Seeing none, there's a recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation that owners and tenants in occupation of property within 75 meters, that's 246 feet, of 10273 Cleveland Road be notified regarding development variance application number DV 100331 to vary the required minimum front and exterior side setbacks, and that any written correspondence received be forwarded to council at the time of consideration of approval of the variance.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none from committee, I'll just pause in that we have another item on the agenda. You'll note that this is the first time this evening that these projects have come before committee. And so this is the juncture at which committee may choose, if it looks favorably upon a project or otherwise, to seek consultation with the immediate neighbors, so to speak. And so in this case, Mr. Beck, committee is just recommending that your neighbors be notified of this project. I know you've done some of that yourself. And then a date is set for that feedback to come back before council. So that's the process, and that will apply equally to the next item on our agenda. So with that bit of context, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, the motion's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Randy, for retrieving the mayor. We'll just pause while we bring the mayor back in, and Mr. Beck, that's it for your item. So you're welcome to depart should you so choose, or you're welcome to join us for the next item.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hello?
We'll just stand by for one moment, please. Thank you. So, thank you. The next item on the agenda is 7B, a development variance permit application number DV 100332 for 10181 Wildflower Place and 2516 Amherst Road. This is to reduce the front and rear setbacks and to reduce the setback for a rooftop access structure in order to allow the construction of 2 new dwellings. We have a presentation from the applicant. Welcome, Mr. Vidlin. Sorry, you're Mr. Dunsmuir. Mr. Vidlin is the applicant. You are the presenter. Mr. Dunsmuir, welcome. And you have 10 minutes, and then we'll give opportunity for questions.
Thank you very much. I'm Michael Dunsmuir of Step One Design, and I'd like to present this application for the development permit. I'll just start my slideshow here. If I can get it to
Just
work.
point it towards the laptop, and that might help. There you go.
Thank you. So I'd like to outline this DVP to construct 2 single-family dwellings on the corner of Wildflower and Amherst. As the model rotates, we can see the 2 homes being built side by side. Lot A is a compact 2-story home to be built on the corner lot with a roof deck access along the southern facade that has been designed as a feature to enhance the streetscape. The Lot B is a single story to be built on the waterfront lot that is to be accessed from the end of Wildflower. So here's our site plan. I'll just go over the variances. We are seeking variances for the front yard for Lot A. Does this have a? It does not. Okay. Okay. So we're seeking a variance for the front yard setback for Lot A, which you can see on on the left of the screen. The current setback would be 7.5 meters, and that is highlighted with the bold red lines that are on the site plan. If the zoning was adhered to, we would basically be providing for sort of long and narrow homes. The dark black line would indicate the existing home that has, the bold black line would indicate the existing home that has since been demolished. And as you can see, that the existing home has a similar building footprint width as the new footprint would be for the proposed residence on Lot B. And the rooftop access is noted as the blue square, the bold blue square that is shown for the Lot A home. Now, the placement of the rooftop access was situated on the south side of the house to provide more open space to the north. In behind the video for the other counselor, I had shown some tall trees that currently exist at the end of Wildflower that are probably, that could very well be obstructing further views to the south. So the thinking was to position the stair tower access more to the south, again, to alleviate any obstruction of views to the north. So that is my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone would have.
Thank you, Mr. Dunsmuir. And we'll just pause. Am I mistaken, or were the two properties mislabeled on the PowerPoint, Lot A and B? Are they correct?
They're correct. Lot A is the corner lot at the front, and Lot B is the waterfront lot.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to turn to members of the public to see if they have any questions of the applicant. Please come forward to the podium, state your name and the municipality where you live, and you're welcome to ask a question of the applicant and or committee. If we can answer it, we'll try to.
I might
or
have
staff
more than
will
one
try
then.
to.
Bert Robillard, I do live in Sydney, on Amherst. First question is, has the division of the lots been approved already or not?
I'll yield to staff, but subdivision approval is done by the approving officer, not by council or committee, so I'll turn to Ms. Verhagen to answer that question.
Yes, the subdivision was approved in December 2022.
Okay. And one other question that I had in the letter that I sent near the end was notifying people close to the area. It hasn't been done, but I think you said earlier why it hasn't been done. It'll be done after the presentation here today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that's on the instruction of committee that staff would then proceed with notification.
And the last thing would be the third floor patio that the developer wants to put in. My comment is there's no other third floor developments or third floor structures in any of the other buildings in the area. So this one is going to be something new and not quite in the keeping of the neighborhood. Other than that, for now, that's what I have.
Thank you, sir. I'll turn to see if there are any other questions of either the town or the applicant. Yes, sir. Come on forward to the microphone, please, and full name and municipality of residence.
My name's Tony Archer. I live at 10180 Wildflower across the street. And we face to the east over the pre-existing home that was there. And I've sent the letters stating how things will change for us. A question that I have is, why didn't the developer stay within the boundaries already set out by the town of Sydney? I read in their letter that they didn't think that 32 or 30 feet would be adequate to build a home, but we know that there's a number of other homes in the area that can easily be built within those parameters. So I don't know if I should be directing my question here.
I'll direct your question, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, thanks very much.
And well, before I sit down, I guess, yeah, it would have been nice to be invited to the meeting tonight.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll speak to the second point. I appreciate that comment. Again, if this is a project that moves forward, this is the stage when the town would mail out those notifications as part of the next step in the process. But I understand what you're saying. These agendas are put out the Thursday ahead of the meeting on the town's website, and of course, it's not realistic to think you're going to be scanning the town's website looking for a development next door to you. So we appreciate that you were able to attend this evening, certainly. If we could go back to the first part of the question, which was with respect to why you're seeking variances and not building within the zoning bylaw requirements.
If I could get my site plan back up, I could refer to that.
Yeah, you should be able to scroll down to it and click on it.
Okay. So to try and answer your question, the front yard setback is defined by which side of the lot that the street faces on. Okay, so if the zoning were to apply to Wildflower, because that is now would be the new front yard, the front yard setback would be 7.5 meters, and we would get more narrow side yards. Okay, so therefore we would be permitted to spread out more on the lot. But given the existing zoning, when this was one lot, had Amherst the front yard, and this the rear yard, and these the side yards. So this is creating a much more narrow building footprint. The existing home was actually wider than what the zoning would be applied to. And perhaps Allison or someone from Sydney could maybe correct me if I'm wrong in that.
So I'll look to staff to see if they can clarify
so-
that statement.
Sure, so to clarify, the zoning bylaw states that the front lot line, like on a corner property such as Lot A here, the property of 10181 Wildflower, the new 10181 Wildflower, the shortest lot line on a street is deemed to be the front lot line for the purposes of calculating setback. The house can be designed to have the front door facing whichever way the designer pleases, but for the purpose of calculating the front setback, we take it from the shortest lot line fronting onto the street. In this case, the shortest lot line is the east-west line adjacent to Amherst. So that is the front lot line. The rear, so that's the front yard where you see the words Lot A on the drawing. The rear yard is the north yard. The exterior side is adjacent to Wildflower Place. And then the interior side yard is adjacent to Lot B, between the two houses. For Lot B, the one now addressed as 2516 Amherst, with a driveway off Amherst, close to where it turns to a pedestrian path going down to the beach. That property has a front yard facing south towards Amherst. That's its front lot line, is facing south. So the north yard, up towards Wildflower, facing north, that's the rear yard. And then it's got two interior side yards. That's the way the zoning bylaw calculates where the front yard is. Thank you.
Thank you. Just going to allow Mayor McNeil Smith to ask a question on that point of clarification.
Through you, staff, could staff please, through you, Chair, to staff, could you please repeat that with regards to Lot A and B, please?
Sure. Before I do, just to clarify your point, you were asking for clarification on how we determine which is the front lot line for calculating
Correct.
setbacks.
Yeah.
So the front lot line is the shortest one fronting onto a street.
Mhm.
The corner lot, Lot A, has two lot lines fronting onto a street, and they're slightly different dimensions. The shorter one is considered the front lot line. That's where we measure back from 7.5 meters. Lot B, the waterfront lot, only has one lot line fronting onto a street. That's fronting onto Amherst.
That doesn't answer my question.
Sorry, if I
Okay,
may.
so we'll just let the mayor continue with his line of questioning, and then we'll circle back to see if you've got a follow-up question. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Through you to staff, sorry, for clarification again, Lot A, the front yard is considered on Wildflower Place.
No,
That's not the narrower of the,
the Amherst lot line, the one running east-west.
okay. So on Lot A, the frontage is on Amherst.
Because that's the shorter.
Yeah, the
lot
shorter
line.
lot line fronts onto Amherst. That's considered the front lot line. The rear lot line of Lot A is the north lot line.
So the frontage, the frontage is, for Lot A is on Amherst, and for Lot B?
For Lot B, the frontage is also on Amherst. It doesn't have a lot line fronting onto Wildflower.
Right.
It only has a lot line fronting onto Amherst.
Thank you for the clarification. I cede the floor, Chair.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn back to Mr. Dunsmuir to see if there's anything further before I ensure that your question's been answered. Mr. Dunsmuir, do you have anything further to add?
I think I was just trying to illustrate that the defined zoning bylaw that determines what is a front yard and what is a rear yard and what are the sides is creating this very narrow building envelope. The existing home didn't even conform to this building envelope. So what we're proposing to do is go slightly wider on this house and seek variances for it and pull back from the waterfront. And this lot, which was a subdivided small lot, again, we're trying to stay as far away from property lines as possible. And we're allowing for an exterior side yard on Wildflower that we comply with. So we're really only asking for small strips of variances, as these houses aren't unusually large.
Okay. Thank you. Before I turn back to you, Tony, to make sure that answered your question, I'm going to just point something out. And again, it's either, I've asked this previously, so either I'm confused or the presentation is. Looking at the site plan that's in front of me, Lot B is identified as proposed residence B at Amherst. And when I look over to the left, Lot B is identified as
B
on
and B.
Wildflower. Look at the diagram, the site plan.
This is lot A, lot A.
Okay, I can't see what you're pointing to over there. So,
Do you want me to come there?
sure, here's the screen in front of me.
This is lot A, proposed residence for lot A.
Correct.
Which has an address.
Okay, so look over, slide your finger to the left. What does that say? What does it, keep going, other slide. Yeah, what does that say?
That's lot A, that's the lot A house.
And what does the address for the Lot A address say?
10181 Amherst.
No.
Oh, the surveyor may have mislabeled this.
Yeah, that's why I'm confused.
And that was my initial question, but I'll let you keep going, but. Yeah, the map is correct, but I think the two, the addresses for Lot A and Lot B over on the left-hand side in your PowerPoint are mislabeled. I don't think it's the surveyor, I think it's the PowerPoint.
My apologies.
So that's part of the reason I've been confused. I don't know if anyone else up here has had that struggle as well. Mayor?
Thank you. So in the staff report, under overview of development proposal, the applicant is proposing to construct a single family dwelling on each new fee simple lot resulting from a recent subdivision. The new lots, 10181 Wildflower Place, Lot A. Sorry, could I ask clarification from staff, please?
Yes, that is correct. In the staff report, both in the text of the report and in the appendices, Lot A is the two-story house proposed for the corner lot at Wildflower and Amherst, shown on that TV as Lot A. The property now addressed as 2516 Amherst Avenue has a driveway off Amherst and is the waterfront lot, Lot B.
So the site plan is correct?
The site plan is correct.
It's these labels here.
Correct.
The staff report is correct.
And the staff report is correct. Any further questions, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry not to get this. Why is, if the frontage is for Lot A is on Amherst, why does it have an address of 10181 Wildflower?
Through the chair to Mayor Neil Smith, the addressing can be off of either street. The zoning bylaw determines the front lot line for the purpose of calculating setbacks.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll pause from the presenter for a moment and just make sure that that has addressed your question to your satisfaction. You understand the answer? Mr. Archer, do you want to just reapproach the microphone if you want to rephrase any question? And then I'll turn to others in the public who may have further questions.
Sorry, I understand the frontage, that's not the issue, is basically just why is there a variance required? Why can the designer not stick within the red boundaries that are set out by the town of Sydney already? And to use an excuse of the previous house that was probably built in the 50s, I don't even know if the red boundary was there back then. So I think more justification is required for making these houses so big. And the height of Lot A, in my eyes, is a 3-story home, not a 2-story.
Okay. So thank you. And I'll just give Mr. Dunsmuir another opportunity. I know during your presentation you spoke to the fact that it would make for very sort of long, narrow, elongated homes, and that was your comment at the time. Is there anything further to add to Mr. Archer's question?
Well, I can appreciate his concerns and saying, well, why don't you just make the house fit within the 33 feet? I believe that for the proposed residence, Lot A, we tried to stay within that red boundary as much as possible. Again, the variances aren't excessive, and to build within that is not really practical in many cases when you're building a brand new home. It would make for a very narrow building, and if that were the case, then we could build to here. We decided to pull away from the water and just widen slightly. This is a 1-story home, so it's not a towering house. It's low in profile. We feel it meets the scale of the property. To build within here is, in many ways, just not practical. If we can, we would like to be able to build a wider house, as this is a fairly wide lot. The open site space is fairly conservative. We're not putting a 5,000 square foot house on that property. As I said, it's in our opinion, very in keeping with the size of the lot. With the subdivided property, which is already approved to build a house on a 500 square meter lot, again, this house, we're asking for modest variances just to fit a garage, a den, at least on the front of the house. And as far as it being 3 stories, we are permitted to build a rooftop access. So it's not 3 stories, it's 2 stories plus a rooftop access, which is in the bylaw, which is permitted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dunsmuir. I'm going to look to other members of the public, see if there are any final questions for Mr. Dunsmuir from the public. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, ma'am, you first, and then gentleman at the back.
Hi, my name's Terry Geddes. I'm at 10170 Turnmill Close, so I'm kitty corner to this. I'm just curious, was there like, when the subdivision was approved, was there variance between here already done? Because I mean, you know, there's setbacks for, yeah, so I'm curious about that. And
Okay,
I'm
let's
just-
pause with that one then, and I can't see where you pointed, but staff can, and so perhaps Ms. Verhagen can comment on that first question.
Sure, thank you. No variances were required for the subdivision process. The building envelopes meet the minimum building envelope permitted by the subdivision and development bylaw for the town. It's bylaw 1390.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, can I do a second question?
Yes, you may.
Just out of curiosity, because this is waterfront, is there special setbacks when it comes to waterfront? You know, like
Again,
more
I'll-
than 25 feet or?
Thank you. I'll pose that question of staff.
Sure, yes, thank you. The zoning bylaw for Sydney does specify a minimum setback to the natural boundary, like to the high water mark, and that requirement is 7.6 meters, which is 25 feet. So this development, the house on Lot B, being the waterfront lot, is proposed at a setback of 14.87 meters to the waterfront. So it definitely exceeds that minimum setback of 7.6 meters.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, you had a question in the back.
My name is Bob Lougheed. I'm at 10186 Wildflower Place, across the street, sort of kitty corner to this proposed development. And I do know, I have history on Wildflower Place since 1961. We built that house when we moved here from Calgary. So, Mr. Archer mentioned that that existing building's been there since in the early 50s. I can attest to the fact that probably before that. Nevertheless, I was curious about, Ms. Verhagen, you mentioned the proposed setbacks on the front lot line, and the front lot line being Wildflower Place is shorter than the Amherst Avenue side. And when you made your comment there, it seemed to be confusing for me.
Okay, so I'll pose that question through to staff, please, if you can further comment.
Sure, I can speak to that. So the previous, like the original lot here,
Yes.
the house that was built in the
Yeah.
50s,
Oh,
whenever
yeah.
it was built, its front lot line was on Wildflower Place because
Correct.
that was the shortest lot line fronting onto a street.
Correct.
That frontage on Wildflower is
Yes.
shorter than the Amherst Avenue
Yes.
frontage. The subdivision of the lot changed that. So the new lot addressed as 10181 Wildflower, the square lot A on the corner. If you look at the dimensions in the staff report here, and they're probably up on the screen there, it's just very tiny.
Okay, I got
So
it
the
right here.
south lot line of Lot A shows a length of 18.58 meters. The west lot line of Lot A, fronting onto Wildflower, has a length of 20.258 meters. So then the south lot line on a street is shorter than the west lot line on a street. So the Amherst frontage, the south line is shorter, that's the front yard.
No, it's not.
It is for the purpose of determining the setback in the zoning bylaw.
I've got drawings here that,
But the property's been re-subdivided, so that changes the lot line dimensions.
okay.
So when it's subdivided through to staff, is that subdivision then noted with land title? That's the new dimensions of both lots then?
It is, yes, that subdivision plan was filed at Land Titles in December of 2022 and registered, and that created these two new parcels that we're looking at here. So that does change the
I understand that the
dimensions.
subdivision's gone through and all, but I needed clarification on that earlier statement there. Okay.
Any other questions, sir?
No other questions. I'll save my comments for my written submission to mayor and council.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Cheers. A final call for any questions of the presenter. And I'll look to council to extend public participation beyond 20 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Call a question, all in favor? Motion is carried, thank you.
My name is Virginia Hambley, and I live at 10206 Wildflower Place in Sydney, which is at 11 o'clock on the end of Wildflower, so not waterfront, okay? My concern, and I have lived in that house since, well, for 27, 28 years, so I've been around the neighborhood and have seen it evolve. My concern is particularly the summertime Amherst and the access to that beach. That beach is a very busy beach, which means that most people bring cars. When you bring a car, where are you going to park it? Now, right now, I can't even guess how many spaces there are, but the spots facing south on Amherst, which we're talking about this side, are all established. But then there is a house there with its driveway on the south side. That is across from all of this development. So at that point, then I think there's room for a couple of spots here. My point is that there is right now parking, east-west parking on the north side. In other words, along here. Well, you're going to have a driveway here. That's going to take parking out of the way. You know, is this the way it's proposed? Is it going to impact on the citizens of Sydney and North Saanich from enjoying that area because there's nowhere to park?
Thank you. So I don't expect Mr. Dunsmuir to be able to address that, but I will suggest that that's a consideration for committee to have in mind. I don't know that staff can offer any comment on those observations. In terms of the parking capacity now for that access at the end of the road, whether or not there's been problems noted or not for committee's information, I'll pause to see if staff want to comment. If not, we'll take those items under advisement. No comment from staff, so thank you. Last call, any questions from the public of the presenter?
My name is Jillian Archer. I live at 10180 Wildflower, so directly across the street from Lot A. I have two questions. One I believe would be addressed to staff. And perhaps to Councillor Duncan, when the subdivision was approved, did the town do their due diligence as far as environmental sensitivity area on that lot being waterfront, only supposed to be having a single family dwelling on that house, not having it be subdivided into two properties because it reduces the natural habitat around the area? I'm just wondering if that was taken into consideration prior to the property being subdivided?
Okay, so we'll pause and I'll put that question through to staff with respect to subdivision process and the environmentally sensitive area. Mr. Hagan?
Sure, thank you. That subdivision application was received in April of 2021, so before this area was designated as an environmentally sensitive area. So subdivision applications are protected by legislation from bylaws that would affect them for a time period of 12 months. Other types of applications like building permits, zoning amendments, development permits are not protected by that same legislation in the Local Government Act. So this subdivision, when the town's new official community plan declaring the waterfront properties in this neighborhood as being within the Shore Acres environmentally sensitive development permit area, when that OCP was adopted in June, we advised this applicant that their subdivision application was protected from this new ESA process, but their demolition permit was not. So they had to get a development permit minor done in-house by staff to look at the environmental impact of the demolition before the house could be taken down. So they did go through that process, yes. And they're having to apply for 2 additional development permits to look at the landscaping on the site before building permits can be issued for these houses as well. So yes, it has been looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. And so, Ms. Archer, you've got a question, but it can't be directed to a single member of council.
Sorry.
So questions are to the
To you.
chair,
Okay.
and then through the chair, if committee can answer, they will, or they will refer it to staff.
Okay. Second question. As far as the plans go, when you're looking at the height of Lot A, the third story, like the development needs to be within 8 meters. The rooftop patio railing on the drawings is at 8 meters. But what that does is it pushes the elevator shaft and staircase higher than that 8-meter line. And I'm unclear as to whether that is just because it's part of a rooftop patio, therefore it is permitted to be above that 8-meter line, or if there should in fact be a variance for the height of that elevator shaft and staircase.
Okay, thank you. First, I'm just gonna turn to Mr. Dunsmuir to verify the measurements you've stated, and then I'll turn to staff to answer the questions with respect to the height variance that may or may not be required. Mr. Dunsmuir?
Yeah, so the railing, the top of the railing is within 8 meters of average grade.
Okay, and the question further was around the height to the elevator shaft.
With regard to rooftop accesses, they are permitted to go above 8 meters as long as they're not more than 50 square feet. There's a size of them that they can't exceed, and we meet those requirements.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dunsmuir.
We're just
I'll
asking for a variance for the rooftop access because we want to get it south and not plop it right on the middle of the house.
Okay, that's right, and I'll get you to speak closer to the microphone next time you're up, just so that people online can hear. That's fine for now. Ms. Verhagen, I'll ask for you to confirm that interpretation, please.
Sure, thank you. So section 5.1.8 of the town zoning bylaw gives general height regulations and exemptions. So elevator shafts for direct elevator access to rooftop common areas, like a rooftop patio, are allowed to project not more than 4 meters above the highest point of a building. So the elevator shaft component can be 4 meters taller than the roof of the building. So that is permitted. That is 518C. In the bylaw, it also has 518K. Guardrails for rooftop patios shall not project more than 1.1 meters above the floor of the rooftop patio, and that reflects directly to the building code minimum height for a guardrail for safety. So those two things are permitted to project above the roof of the building.
At 8 meters.
Above 8 meters. The house can be 8 meters tall to the peak of the roof, in case the highest point of the flat part of the roof. And then the elevator shaft can project 4 meters above that.
Okay. So, sorry, Ms. Archer, could you just speak to the microphone so that they can hear you online? Thank you.
So 8 meters to the top of the roof line, but in this case, the 8 meters goes to the top of the railing. So it is then within height. Okay.
The height of what the height of what's being proposed meets the zoning bylaw. They're not looking for a variance for any height relaxation.
Okay, I was just unclear as to whether the height of the elevator shaft would then be included in the overall height of the building.
Good question. Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Archer?
One more question, and I know you can't see this, I apologize. Part of the variance claims that this rooftop access the variance be allowed to push it out further to the property line. What I see in the drawings is then that this actual whole piece of the house also needs to have a variance. It's not just this staircase here to keep this closer. This patio on the second floor protrudes farther than the glass frontage of that staircase. So is it not reasonable then to assume that if the variance is for this staircase, that the house could technically be within that blue line, level with that blue line, instead of protruding beyond that staircase?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Archer. I'll allow Mr. Dunsmuir to answer the question, and then we'll look to staff to verify. Mr. Dunsmuir?
Thank you. So yes, we are seeking variances for that front yard setback for the house, and we're seeking another variance to move the rooftop access to that exterior wall, because there would normally be a setback from the wall face below 25% of the building's width, and we are going to 0. We are pulling that rooftop access right to this exterior wall. And as far as could we build the house within the red rectangle, we wouldn't be able to fit in the minimum amount of rooms. As I said, this is not a large home. It's typically a double garage with a den and a front entrance. And then the living room is going in toward that exterior side yard. So there's no house, right next to that road. It's essentially an exterior side yard. The way that we're looking at it is that we're saying if we go to, you know, closer to 4 meters, we're just going closer to a street. We're not going closer to somebody's house or somebody else's property. That was the rationale there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dunsmuir. I'll turn to staff to see if there's any further clarification they would like to offer on that.
No, thank you.
Thank you, staff. So my final call to members of the public, if you have any questions of the presenter. Seeing none, I will thank Mr. Dunsmuir for your presentation. I am going to thank the public as well for your questions. I think it's our turn now here to ask a few questions and trying to get some clarity from the presenters. So there may be some more questions for you, Mr. Dunsmuir, at this time. I'll start with Councillor Duncan, and then I think I saw Councillor Garnett.
Thank you. Now, I guess just looking at this drawing and you know, the dark lines, and I appreciate that for the most part, a lot of the houses within the current house's footprint. But after the discussion about the subdivision of Lot A and B and how that would have changed the orientation of your setbacks, I don't know if it was you who subdivided this or somebody else did and then they sold it, but it looks to me as though if the Lot A had actually been wider on the east-west dimension, you would have had setbacks that made it so that that entire house that's on Lot A, you know, that red line would have swiveled this way and it would have been within, and you wouldn't have required variances for the Lot A residents.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what the rationale was for doing it the other way. Initially looking at the
I could maybe try and answer that. So it's quite obviously a long, skinny lot when it was one lot. And it's a fairly large lot that does meet the requirements to be subdivided. The reason why that interior lot line was put where it was is the end of Amherst obviously only goes so far. So the subdivision would have been created to lay down that property line to still allow a driveway to come in off Amherst. Otherwise, that lot is marooned. You can't get on it. So that is probably the furthest west that property line can go.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess then, if I may have a second question.
Please.
Pertaining to that, one of the letters was speaking about the potential for a sidewalk for our active transportation plan that goes down Amherst to that beach, and if we wanted to do that in the future as a town, how that would be affected by this development. And looking at this doesn't look as though this property, the subdivision and the construction on it would impact the town's property there, that if there was a sidewalk, it would simply do what most sidewalks do, and that driveway would cross it, but that wouldn't impact our ability to build a sidewalk down there, I don't believe. No. Thank you.
No, it's a fairly wide right of way, I guess you'd say.
Thank you.
Councillor Duncan, did you want staff to verify that position?
Sure.
Sure, through the chair to Councillor Duncan. That it is a wide right-of-way on the north side of Amherst Avenue. There would be ample space. That improvement was not required as part of the subdivision because it was only a 2-lot subdivision. We don't require sidewalks for a 2-lot subdivision.
Okay, thank you. The question wasn't regarding the requirement. I hope nobody in the public now will think that they were supposed to do that. It was one of the letter writers was saying that would potentially be something we should be looking at for accessibility as part of our ATP. That was their feedback for the active transportation plan, that this is not very accessible to those without cars currently. And I thought that was an interesting piece of feedback. And one final one, if I may, because it follows off that the driveway for Lot B, I had actually, looking at the air photo, I had thought that there currently was a driveway there, but I realized it's actually a footpath. That it's the access there, and of course in the picture you can see somebody has parked in front of that person's footpath access. Is that, I guess this is a question through to staff, we're not required to maintain like that it's okay to park in front of somebody's like foot access to their house currently. Because I'm wondering, would we even, by building this driveway, one person asked that, you know, would we be losing spaces, parking spaces? It looks like potentially one that's seen on the air photo, except right now it kind of looks like that person's actually blocking the person's access to the house, and I'm not sure if that's even a legal parking spot to begin with. Can staff comment on that?
I'm not aware if we have any bylaws prohibiting parking on street adjacent to someone's footpath accessing a sidewalk. I don't think that is a prohibited thing.
Okay.
But it is not permitted to block a driveway.
Okay, thank you.
I could answer that question for you.
No, I'm sorry, sir. Thank you, though. I'll now turn to Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dunsmuir, for your presentation. I have a few, Chair. Sorry. First of all, I'm curious. When was the house demolished? Best to your recollection.
I don't think I can answer that, actually. Mr. Vidalin, who is not present, took care of that.
I'm just, the only reason I ask, and this is just something that just came up in conversation beforehand with another councillor, having visited the site there on Friday, I was surprised to see there were appliances on the lot, and I'm wondering why they're there and why they haven't been removed.
Those could have been the existing appliances that still have to be picked up by somebody.
Oh, okay, hopefully that'll happen
Yeah,
soon.
I'm afraid I just can't answer that
no,
question for
okay,
you.
fair enough. The next question I have is with regards to this, because I did a circle all the way around on the beach, and the stairs that are in the picture, I'm assuming they'll be kept, but they're in pretty bad disrepair right now. So is there a plan for those going forward?
There could be some regulations with regard to altering those stairs, in that there could be some environmental concerns about taking them out. Can you keep them? I'm sure that the applicant would rebuild them if it was required. But again, I was asked that question whether or not those stairs were staying, and it's our intention not to remove those stairs.
Yeah, just to your point, there is a lot of things around stairs,
Yeah.
especially now that this is an environmentally sensitive area. I didn't note it anywhere in the proposal we were given that there's a landscape plan. So I'm wondering if you, other than looking at an artist's rendition, it's hard for me to determine what it is you might have in mind for planting in terms of trees or whatever have you.
There has been a full landscape design done, and those plans have been submitted to the town of Sydney.
Okay, well, I don't have them in my package, so.
To my knowledge, they have been submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Dunsmuir. I'll turn to staff.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Garnett. Those are being reviewed by staff as part of those development permit minor applications to look for conformity with the design guidelines for this environmentally sensitive DP area.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the clarification. The next question I have is with regards to, I know you've described the size of the lot and trying to work within it, but I'm curious, given the zoning, what's allowed in there, was there ever the thought of developing just a single family home with, say, a suite or even potentially a duplex? I'm just wondering why there's the two separate, why you went that direction particularly.
That was not my decision. The applicant came to me and to my knowledge, already had the subdivision in the works for two single family. I think with just the cost of property on such a large lot, a waterfront lot, without wanting to build one huge house, the thought was to do two smaller homes, and one being basically a small lot house, which is the front lot, and trying to keep something, that isn't ballooning huge. And I'm not sure if I've answered your question yet.
Yeah, no, I was a little puzzled by it because when I'm looking at the staff report and the square meters of each home, they both add up to over 5,600 square feet in total floor area. So
In two houses.
Yeah, combined. So it's still a lot of square footage. My last question, it's around the rooftop access structure or deck or patio, however you want to refer to it. So when I'm looking at your diagrams, I see there's quite an ample sized patio space on the ground floor. And the second floor also has quite a nice little deck to it. So I'm just curious as to why there needs to even be a rooftop structure access, given you have all that outdoor space already. what was the thinking behind that?
Okay, so the patio off at the ground floor is actually quite small. If you scale that out, and we do have floor plans that have been submitted, that is definitely, it's just really like a skirt roof that's covering the living room. You could maybe fit some chairs out there, but it's definitely not a large outdoor living space. The second deck that is off the master bedroom, again, is more of a balcony. And that was really to get some views looking out in between the waterfront lot and let's say the beach access, to look through there. The thought with the rooftop deck was to see over the new house, was to create some outdoor living up top to look over top and get some water views, which you would be entitled to, given that your lot has access to those views, right?
If I may follow up, Chair, one last question. I don't know if anybody's really entitled to an ocean view, but that's my perspective. Would it be a fair statement to say that by having a rooftop access, you do increase the value of the home?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. I'll turn next to Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but Councillor Duncan asked my questions for me, for which I am grateful, and the answers have satisfied me, and I have nothing to add.
Thank you. I'll look to other committee colleagues. I see Councillor O'Keefe with her hand raised, and then Mayor McNeil-Smith. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Chair. So back to the developer. So I just wanting to clarify, so that the combined square footage of the two houses, as you said, is about 5,600 square feet. So they're both roughly 2,000 or so square feet apiece.
The waterfront house is approximately 2,000 for a main floor, which is in keeping with a master bedroom on the main floor. I wouldn't call that a large home by any stretch to be, as again, we're fitting all your living on one level. With Lot A, again, we have a double car garage, a den, kitchen, living, dining on the main. Upstairs is 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Again, a family home. Really what I think most people are looking for in a home today would be that 3 bedroom, 2 bath. And then the rooftop deck, again, is what's on top of the house, looking over the waterfront to capture some of that beautiful water view.
Right, okay. Now you mentioned that my understanding of the setbacks on the front anyways is that it's 12.8 feet and 14.7 feet for the front. Have I understood that correctly?
I'm sorry, which house? Which property?
For both. I think one of them was 12.8 feet and the other 14.7 feet for the front setback.
Okay.
Just wanting to confirm that my understanding of that is correct.
Right.
And so you would characterize those as minor setbacks?
I would say that given those setbacks are on a street with no immediate neighbor, there's somebody across the street, but they're more of an exterior side yard in the rationale. So the fact that we have a large boulevard, we're quite a ways back from the road. We are then, still a good 12 feet from the property lines. And even the proposed B, once the house gets past the end of Amherst, there's really nobody in front of them. They're completely on their own. If you look at the properties to the north, they all have narrow side yards. We're actually providing more, even though they're called it's called the rear yards, we're actually providing more space to that lot 12 to the north. That setback is only 5 feet or 1.5 meters. We're exceeding that. So all around these houses, we're actually, in our view, providing ample setback. where in a lot of those cases, those setbacks could potentially get down to 1.5 meters.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So
thank
really,
you.
the anomaly of the red rectangle is just really coming from the fact of where these setbacks are defined from.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So in your letter, you mentioned that if you were to apply the setbacks as per the zoning bylaw, this would create undue hardship for the developments. So I gather from the previous discussion that the undue hardship is that you would have to build a smaller house, or is there anything besides? I might have a different understanding of what
Right.
undue hardship.
Right. It's very
so
difficult to, I'm sorry, it's very difficult to fit in required rooms in 33 feet wide. When you factor a garage that is, for instance, 20 feet wide for a double car, that only leaves you 11 feet for an entrance and possibly another room. So everything becomes very compressed and elongated. And so you would end up with this long, skinny house that just doesn't suit the property given the lot width. That would be one comment I suppose I could make. Undue hardship is a term we basically say, well, these setbacks are causing us difficulty to design the house. It's causing us difficulty to design the house that we're looking for, that we're wanting to fit in given the property, like the value of the property. And therefore we're seeking variances, and we felt that the variances were fairly modest in nature.
Right, okay. And well, I presume that when the lot was subdivided and the lot was purchased, the developer was aware of the restrictions in terms of building on the lot. And I guess if the variances weren't approved, have you got a plan? What's the plan B?
Well, the plan B would probably be we'd have to fit a house in 33 feet, and we would center it, and we obviously, if we don't get the rooftop access, we would have to push it and plunk it on the middle of the house up top. And we were trying to keep the rooftop away from any views or any shadowing that was to the north. If I look to the south, there's tall trees along the end of Amherst, which are already blocking sun and creating some shadow, and we're trying to get open space more south along Amherst where there aren't immediate neighbors. So plan B, we would have to build tall, long, skinny houses closer to the water on lot B, and then lot A would now become a skinny, we'd have to put more floor area, obviously, within that, in this strip right here. So in between the two houses, we'd have to add more density, and we would look at centering the rooftop deck and putting it right on top of the house. We were trying to get a nice facades for each home. As you walk down Amherst, you would see these nice modern houses designed, and we're trying to create some street appeal on both sides. So both Wildflower and Amherst.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dunsmore.
Okay.
Any further,
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Keith?
Thank you for that. I had a couple questions, but more for staff. Should I ask those now or hold those?
No, let's
for our
hold on to those.
discussion?
We'll have staff do a quick update, and then I'll turn to you as a first speaker when we get to that item. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Next
That's
speaker
all
on
for
my
me
list.
then, thank you.
Yeah, Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Dunsmuir, for your presentation and taking questions this evening. Could you please go to your, I believe was the first slide that showed both. Oops. It was a slide
This
that
one.
showed both homes.
Yes.
I think from Amherst.
Yes. Maybe we could start that. It's 10-second movie. It's 10-second video.
Are you able to pause it? Just
I'm just trying to get it to go here. and it just keeps wanting to move to the next slide. I think I'm in the mode that won't prevent me from restarting this. If we click on that little arrow that's at the bottom, it'll start. I'm sorry.
From beginning, maybe, yeah.
It's fast, so you,
So stop at any time?
Can you pause it?
yeah. You can go a bit further if you want to get both. There, that's a good one there.
Actually,
Oh.
yeah, I'd like it to actually sort of face both equally.
I think we actually have drawings of full elevations of everything.
Well, we
Yeah,
do, but I
yeah.
just want to have it up on the screen.
Sure.
Stop. Oh, sorry, a little further. Oh.
Super quirky, sorry for that.
No pressure, Anna.
Quick.
Okay, I appreciate the efforts, and I'll just make reference. I think we've now seen this, and we know this is the house on Lot A looking from
Side.
Amherst.
Yeah.
And the house is beside it. I just want to confirm the numbers that are fairly small in the drawings, understandably, because of all the detail. That the square footage for this, sorry, no, it's, did it just move?
Yeah,
When I look
in
down?
advance.
Okay.
Just go back one slide.
That's okay. For the house on Lot A, the house square footage is 2,739 and the garage is 505.
Right.
And for this house, and
This one.
for the house on Lot B, it is
Mhm.
the square footage of the house is 2,439 and the garage is 479.
Okay.
And in terms of the setback requests, this is the house on Lot B. The setback request is from 24.6 feet to 9.9 feet, so it's asking for a variance change of 14.7 feet.
Mhm.
And on Lot A, it's asking for a variant, that same frontage of 12.8 feet.
It's going from 7.5 meters to 4.3 meters.
Okay, from 24.6 feet to 11.8 feet.
Correct, yeah.
On Lot A. Okay, thank you. A question that hasn't arisen, or a point that hasn't arisen tonight, in your letter of rationale, you indicate that 2516 Amherst requires a heat pump setback variance as this home is proposed to be sited less than the required 3 meters. Can either yourself or staff speak to that?
Turn to staff,
I
Ms.
can
Ray.
speak to that, yes. Thank you. Through the chair to Mayor McNeil Smith. The applicant revised their plans to no longer need a heat pump variance, so that's why the plans don't show the variance. I think the letter just was not updated to reflect that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I have first-time speaker, Councillor Duck, and then I'm going to Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to staff for the clarification, because, yeah, my setback was all out of whack because of the layouts here, and I now understand that the setbacks are based on frontage to Amherst for both lots. And I understand now why the driveway is where it is, because we can't tell from this point, but the pathway starts right in that same version. So that is, to your point, you suggested this was as far west as it can go, but this is the farthest east the driveway can go without impacting on.
Correct, yeah.
So just wanted to clarify that. And just if you go back a couple of slides to Lot A and the rendition of it, yes, right there. That patio looks bigger than a postage stamp that you thought it did, and so I'm just want clarification on what is that just the way we're looking at that?
Well, when I think we're talking lot coverage, it's the roof that the lot coverage goes to. So it goes to the posts, but that patio could be reduced in size, and if we refer to the landscape plan, it would show what the landscape architect has designed for that.
Right. So that's to Councillor Garnett's point that you have that patio, you have one above it on the balcony off the bedroom, and then you have now the rooftop one. That patio on that southeast corner is going to have great views to the water because there's nothing blocking it in front of it from the rendition you have here. So I'm again wondering, and keeping the values of our properties accessible, why we need the rooftop patio, and to that point, to the concern of the neighbors here tonight, That seems to be an evident point that maybe that's something that could be taken
Right.
away from it.
Well, I would say that the patio at grade could easily be obstructed by the landscaping and the fence of the neighbor in the front. So when you're down at ground level, that view could go away. That view could disappear. Because if you're seated down, you're below a fence, you're below eye level, and really there wouldn't be much water view down there. The thinking with the rooftop deck was to look over top of, given it's a small lot without a large yard, you would get some outdoor living on top, looking over top of the waterfront house.
Sure. I'm going to disagree with you because I went down to the property and looked at it from that rendition. And certainly the landscaping can be set to afford the owner the view without obstructing it, as it does exist right now. And I think that that can be done. So I would consider, just relative to the neighborhood, that it might be worth giving some thought to just keeping the balcony, which is going to have an elevated view, and the floor level one, and looking at maybe changing and moving away from the rooftop structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duck, and I'll turn now to second time speakers. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, just briefly, just noticing the tenor of the questions from my other councillors. These are being built for market. These are not being built for owner. I know you're kind of talking about the required number of bedrooms and things, and that's based on kind of the market for a home in this value range, and not according to the people who want to live in this house, right?
Yeah, they're spec houses.
There's spec houses.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Can you kind of estimate what the value of these are? Like, I'm a bitter millennial, so I look at this and I think movie star or drug dealer, because no one with a real job can afford these anymore. What is the value of this kind of property on the market these days?
Yeah, I don't know if I could put a price tag on that. As a designer, and with regard to what the real estate value is going to be, I don't think I have the expertise for that. I mean, they definitely look, they look pretty nice, I think. And they are valuable pieces of real estate, obviously, so close to the ocean, with beach access. So, whoever is going to live there, definitely is looking for an upscale property.
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify, I'm not insinuating that you're upscaling it to try and that there's nobody who isn't able to buy a mansion is going to be even considering waterfront property. So that when we are considering whether this is a reasonable sized home, we have to keep in mind that the person who's going to be buying this isn't looking for a reasonable home. They're looking for a waterfront mansion. I know for me, seeing a 2-car garage, I think that's excessive, but when I understand that somebody who is capable of buying a waterfront mansion, they're going to ask for a 2-car garage, because if you have that many millions of dollars to buy a home, that's what you require. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I'll turn to Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you. While this slide is on the screen, the gentleman standing on the picture on the screen, standing on the second level balcony, that would be a completely unobstructed view of the waterfront.
We're hoping, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for a final time to committee colleagues to see if there's any questions for Mr. Dunsmuir. Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some concern. I like the design. I think it looks great. My big concern is, why was a waterfront property that was zoned R1.1 subdivided in a 1/3, 2/3 manner when it didn't need to be? The developer could have bought that property and put a really nice waterfront home on it. And I'm not sure this is something even you can answer. This is a question for the gods, or maybe our staff, who are maybe in the same category. I don't know. But yeah, that's my concern. We end up taking a really nice 15,000 plus square foot property and turning it into a 5,000 square foot and a 10,000 square foot property. The 10,000 square foot property barely has a driveway access because of how the land is configured. And the 5,000-foot property is indeed a compact small lot home, which I think is inappropriate for that site. So my question is, and maybe this is a question for staff, why was this zoning allowed when I suspect that the plan preceded the zoning? You had to have in your mind an idea of what you were going to build there before you go and apply for the zoning, because it could have been zoned differently or not at all.
I think I could maybe try and do my best here to see if I can answer your question. I think if this wasn't subdivided, the front yard would be Wildflower, and Amherst would be an exterior side yard, and the north boundary would be an interior side yard. So we would have a 1.5 meter on the north, and we would have a 3.5 meter on the south. And now we have a wide footprint, and someone could come in and build as big a house as they can get in there and really overtake the neighborhood. What the thought here was to divide this lot and create two homes for somebody, not just one big large house. And lot A is a 500 square meter lot, which is about, it was never meant to be a big house. It was just meant to be, as I said, that 3-bedroom, 2-car garage home that potentially someone could buy. So we are creating housing. If we don't subdivide, then we just open the door to something really big and ostentatious, that could be taller and, bigger. So perhaps that was the mentality, was we don't want to build one big house, we would rather build 2 more modest homes.
I could see that a single-family dwelling on that lot could have a driveway on Amherst with a detached garage and a coach house above, and still have a nice waterfront property, which makes it still, for all intents and purposes, a single-family dwelling with a subsidiary dwelling, which we're now looking for.
Chair, I'd like to call a point of order.
Yes.
I appreciate the questioning from my colleague, but the reality is this property has been subdivided, and so our decision-making and discussion tonight is not with regards to the appropriateness or not of the subdivision, but to the applicant's request.
So thank you. I'll ask Councillor Novak if he has a final question for the presenter.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Last look to committee colleagues. Any questions for the presenter? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Dunsmuir. Sincerely, you answered a lot of questions. You certainly provided some rationale, and I think you heard not only from members of the committee, but from most importantly the community that are going to live adjacent to these properties, some concerns that I hope you can take back to the applicant and give some further consideration to. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You just turn that button, just press that mic off for me. Thank you very much. Thank you. So committee, I'm now going to turn to staff to see if there's any further insight they would like to add, and I'll give committee an opportunity to ask questions of staff, and then we have a recommendation. Ms. Verhagen.
Thank you. I think most of the points of this application have been discussed. One point of clarification about the requested variance to the rooftop access structure setback. So the zoning bylaw, as I said, has height regulations and exceptions for things that can project above the highest point of a building. The rooftop access structure is allowed to project above that point. As I said before, the elevator shaft can project 4 meters above, the guardrails can project 1.1 meters above the floor of the rooftop patio for safety. And the location of the rooftop access structure is the only thing rooftop-wise that they've requested a variance to. If they redesign this to put the rooftop access structure within the bounds of where on the roof it's permitted, it would not need a variance. They're just requesting a variance to put it right at the south edge of the building instead of pushing it back 25% of the depth of the building into that footprint. So that is what the variance is for. Thank you.
Thank you. So at that point, I'll look to committee of the whole to see if there are any questions of staff, and I said I'd begin with Councillor Keith, so I'll start there.
Thank you, Chair. So through you to staff, earlier, I believe staff said, just looking for some confirmation on this, that this property would not be subject to the ESA. And my understanding of the ESA is that we would be looking at things like, you know, what provisions would be in place in regards to movement of soil on and off the property. Also in terms of the soil removal or deposits, the alteration of any natural drainage. I think there's also some notes about the driveway having to be 20 meters for the natural boundary. So would my understanding be correct that we wouldn't be able to address or ask those things, or are those things that might be covered on the landscape plan?
Through the chair to Councillor O'Keefe, yes, as indicated previously, the applicant has submitted 2 development permit applications for the landscaping for these properties in terms of the site plan, the driveway materials, the paver materials on the patios, and the landscaping, the soft plantings. And staff are reviewing those to look for compliance with the guidelines in the OCP for this environmentally sensitive DP area. Those don't pertain to the variances in question tonight. So those are being reviewed separately. Staff would not approve those DP applications until the variance has been decided on by council, because the site plans have to match in terms of the position of the building on the property.
Okay, thank you for that. And then just one other, just in terms of process, if committee was not inclined to approve these variances, what would be the consequence of denying them tonight? Or is it better to let it go through to public? Just thoughts on that.
Through the chair,
Refer that question through to Ms. Verhagen.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, through the chair. So if committee of the whole recommends denial of the variances, then that recommendation would go forward to council to consider making a resolution. And I understand that would be happening in March, not at the council meeting next Monday, but in the March meeting due to budget deliberations at the February 27th council meeting. Council would then consider that recommendation. If they went with that recommendation and made a resolution, the applicant would then redesign the houses to comply with the zoning bylaw and submit revised plans for those DP applications to show new site plans, and then go forward to building permit from there with houses that comply with the zoning bylaw.
Okay, and so if we were to approve it, then it would still go to next council to approve going out for public notification, is that correct?
Yes, after council makes a resolution, if they wanted to see the process move forward, then once council makes a resolution to send out the radius mail out notices, then staff would do that process. We'd send those notices out, and then it would come back to council another time for them to consider final approval of the variance.
Okay, so that's fine, I understand the process, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Turning to committee colleagues, Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I first just want to speak to perhaps further clarify the question and answer from previous colleague. And that is for the public's benefit. So this is a committee of the whole meeting where council is sitting as committee, and our decision tonight is not a final decision. Our decision tonight goes as a recommendation to a future council meeting. We've heard from staff what the timing of that will be, and council at that council meeting, council could agree to approve the recommendation that committee is making tonight, or it could choose to make an alternate. In general, and I don't want to be held fast to this, but in general, the intention of the committee of the whole is to allow the type of discussion and engagement that we've had this evening, a full presentation from the proponent, questions from members of the public, through to the proponent, through to staff, through to council, or through to committee, and then committee to ask questions of the same parties. And so typically we wouldn't look to change our decision at the council meeting that tonight's decision is referred to. One of the factors that could lead to a change in decision at the future council meeting would be new information. I'm not suggesting there will or won't be new information other than what came forward tonight, but I just wanted to touch on the process that council is going. And so when it does come, if council does move this forward tonight, recommend notice to residents, and that goes to council, we could approve that night, and then notices would go out to residents, and then the further feedback received from members of the public would come to a council meeting after that council meeting for council to consider a final decision. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor McNeil-Smith, for the further context for the public. Appreciate that. I'll turn again to committee colleagues to see if there's any further questions of staff. Councillor Duck? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll look for recommendations. Someone to move recommendation. Councillor Duncan?
I'll move the recommendation that owners and tenants in occupation of property within 75 meters or 246 feet of 10181 Wildflower Place and 2516 Amherst Avenue be notified regarding development variance application number DV100332 to vary the minimum requirements for the front yard setback on 10181 Wildflower Place, the front yard setback and rear yard setback on 2516 Amherst Avenue, and the rooftop access structure setback on 10181 Wildflower Place in order to allow for the construction of a single-family dwelling on each lot, and that any written correspondence received be forwarded to council at the time of consideration of approval of the variance.
Second.
Thank you. We have a mover and seconder discussion. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you. I don't see a problem with sending this out to public feedback at this stage in the game. We've already heard from a number of the neighbors, and at this point, I don't see the harm in officially notifying the rest of the neighbors, especially given the misunderstanding that we already have, that people thought they should have been notified about this already. Undoubtedly, other people on that block have heard that there's this development and they haven't been notified, and so I would rather it go out to notification at this point and everybody get looped into the official process. And perhaps there will be additional feedback. Now the developer has heard from these residents, I think it would probably be, to his benefit and everybody and everyone's benefit to hear whether there's any additional feedback now that there's been a lot of clarifications about the rationale, and I'm happy with the developer's rationale for the choices that have been made, and yeah, I'm fine with it going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Duck, a seconder?
Yes, I'm going to agree with my colleague here. I support this going out for further public input. I think the proponent has definitely identified what has to be done here in a clear manner. I am thankful of staff for clarifying where the setbacks were, because that was, I think that information going out to the public is good too, that it's very clear that the setbacks are based on Amherst, not on Wildflower. And those are important pieces and information to that. Further to my comments earlier, I would suggest to the proponent that in terms of the neighborhood that they give consideration to that rooftop piece, because I think that can make or break this project in terms of the neighborhood. But yeah, I think it's time for concerted effort for public to feedback on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Duck. I'll look to other committee matters. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to start by saying that it's unfortunate that the ESA was not in place prior to this development. It's disappointing to me, unfortunately. That's what we're dealt. So I will not be supporting the recommendation. I think I've heard a good tenure from the neighborhood already, and I don't think it's going to be a lot. I mean, there might be some different views, and it'd be good to hear them, but it's not likely to sway me. And I say that from the point of view that there's a lot of variances, and regardless of whether the proponent or here tonight was saying that they're minimal, they're not minimal. This will have a big impact on the neighborhood. when I look at variances, I was asked years ago, how do you feel about variances? We came out of a term when there was many that were granted by perception in the community. And so I said that if there's a tangible community benefit, and I'm looking at this particular project, and there's multiple variances, and the staff report says there were even more and greater scale, which is quite frightening when I see this, actually. And it concerns me because I look at some of the variances we passed recently, even one tonight, helping elderly people age in place in their home, which provides accessible alternatives for seniors in assisted living. I think of the one on Malaby and Fifth, where a small variance there, but it allows for smaller, more homes for families, small families, big families, in a price range that's more acceptable. There's a public amenity on the corner. There's lots of trees being planted. It helps our neighborhood and our community. And I look at this, and I'm really hard for me to pull out. I looked at it from every angle possible. Where is the community benefit? And the only benefits I see from this proposal, if I want to grant variances, is that there's going to be people that are going to get these fantastic homes. Great, that's a good benefit for them. And the proponents are going to make a fairly substantial profit off of these because of the value they're going to sell for, as Councillor Duncan spoke to. And for me, that's not a community benefit. So it's really difficult. So I think this property can be redesigned so that there be even less variances or none at all. And I just don't I completely disagree. I think this could have been designed in a way where there could have been a duplex done, and it could have been done really straight, really conforming to what is already there. And the previous home that existed, which has been referenced, would have been built long before these setbacks were in place. So that's not entering into my decision making at all. I just feel like if I'm going to grant these what I consider significant variances, that I want something that's going to benefit our community, and I just don't see it here. I just don't see enough of the benefit to the community. So I'm sorry, but I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garnett. Next speaker is Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Garnett on this. I won't approve the recommendation. When I look at something like this, while I understand the developer's rationale for wanting the variances, and I don't think that they're insignificant, the rationale is basically not that they can't put a smaller house on there, but they don't want to because they want to maximize their investment. So they want a bigger house, so that they will, 2 houses, so they will maximize their profit. So that's really the only reason for these variances. And during previous discussion, one of my colleagues made the comment that, well, you know what, this is what rich people want, They're not going to buy a waterfront house if they can't have a 2-car garage or they can't have this or that. Well, okay, well, I guess they should look somewhere else. But I'm really uncomfortable. Basically, what we're doing here is we are providing a variance merely for the developer to increase the size of the houses on the property and to maximize their profit. I don't see any community benefit for the rest of us. So, and in terms of putting out there for public input, I think we heard a good amount of input. I can't imagine that for me that I'll hear anything different that will change my mind. So I think it requires a redesign, and in fairness to the developer, rather than prolonging this to then go out for public input and then come back again, I prefer to tell them now that this is not a development that I think fits here, and let them go back to the drawing board rather than prolonging the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. I'll look to committee colleagues. I've got Mayor McNeil-Smith, followed by Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be supporting the motion, and I would like to speak to the 4 variances, but before speaking to the 4 variances, I'd like to speak to the subdivision. It's been discussed a number of times this evening, and I don't have any concerns with the subdivision. It was a decision made by staff with the experience that staff has in subdivision, and with explanation from the presenter this evening, we understand where that east-west subdivision boundary is, and I really don't have any questions about it. It's a reasonable subdivision. Turning to the variances, and I'll start with Lot B. The variances, so the bottom of the screen is south on Lot B, and the variance is 14.7 feet. The variance on the north, which has not been spoken of this evening, is 6 feet. So it's a total variance of 20.7 feet. What is the community benefit for a variance of 20.7 feet? It's to increase the square footage to 2,439 square feet and allow a garage of 479 square feet. I don't see the community benefit in that. It provides perhaps what the proponents consider a more suitable waterfront home, but I don't see the benefit to allowing a variance on that, those variances on that property. With regards to the two variances requested on Lot A, with regards to the variance on the south of 12.8 feet, I really don't have a concern about it, because to me it's 6-1 and half dozen of another whether the frontage of this property is on Wildflower or the frontage is on Amherst. We understand the calculation made by staff as per our zoning bylaw, the calculation that comes out of our zoning bylaw made by staff, but quite frankly, it's a corner lot, it's almost square, and I can understand that. This variance does permit the square footage to go to 2,700 square feet, but and a garage of 500 square feet. But again, given that this is a corner lot, I don't have a particular concern with that variance. With regards to the variance on the rooftop balcony, I thank staff for clarifying that this variance request is not whether we're approving a rooftop balcony and access, it's whether we're approving where the entrance will be and the location of the access on the rooftop. We've also, through questions to staff, understand that our zoning bylaw currently permits the rooftop access and the patio. It's within the zoning bylaw. For me, there is one overarching, perhaps higher goal within our OCP, and that is that new developments should be consistent in form and character and mass with the neighborhood that they're situated. And quite frankly, I don't see this rooftop access being consistent with the form and character and mass within the neighborhood. And so I would not support that. I'm not going to support. I'm not going to support the variance. But if I don't support, if the variance is not supported, we've already heard from staff that this rooftop balcony or patio and access will just be located elsewhere on the roof. And so I would not support. I won't support it going forward. And I'll leave my comments there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll now turn to Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Much of what would like to say, I guess I'm fortunate in being the last one to speak, but much of what I would have liked to say has already been said, so I'll refrain from repeating it too much. I will say, though, I don't think this is the best use of that particular lot. Personally, I would have liked to see it undivided. I don't feel that the subdivision catered to the best potential use of the lot and best potential benefits for the community. The variances being requested are not minor variances, they're substantial variances, as my colleagues have already stated. And I'm not in favor of this as it's proposed, and so I will vote against moving this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Novak. Before we go to second-time speakers, I'm going to provide my comments. I'm inclined to support the motion for the rationale Councillor Duncan mentioned. I think it's important that the community receives the notification on this project. I think it's important that the community in its entirety has an opportunity to provide comment on this project, because I think we heard a lot of things this evening that gave us pause for thought. And there are likely others out there. And in the back of my mind, I also feel compelled to state that frankly, I like the looks of the two houses. I'll acknowledge that. I think aesthetically, they are pleasing. I don't think I would be disappointed to see, you know, houses of this nature in my own backyard. I think where the concern really lies, and the mayor commented on it, is this rooftop access seems to be one of the large sticking points. And I think if we allow this to go out for notification, the developer, the applicant recognizes from this evening that this is a bumpy ride. And this is gonna be a pretty close vote by my calculation right now, and that they might be very wise to give pause for thought and revisit, you know, what they're proposing here. The other side, the flip side of that coin is, of course, you know, being wary of what might come next if the only solution to make these places any larger is going up. That could well be what happens, and that might have unintended consequences for people who are concerned with this. So I appreciate all the public input this evening, and frankly, I'd like to see some more, and I'd like to give the developer and applicant pause for thought as well, so I'll support the motion. Next speaker on my list is Councillor Duck.
Thank you, Chair, and you stole some of my thunder. But if I may be permitted to ask a question through to staff?
Yes.
And through to staff, I just wondered, two questions. We already know that this is a subdivided lot. We're not going to change that. Lot coverage and building height, what are the maximums of both lot coverage for each of these and building heights?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Duck. The property is zoned R1.1. That's a single-family residential zone that allows single-family homes and secondary suites in the houses. It does not allow duplexes. Maximum lot coverage for a one-story house is 40%. For a 2 and a 2.5-story house, maximum lot coverage is 30%, except that you can go up to 35% at the ground floor level. And what was the other part of your question?
Just where do these currently presented by the developer?
Sure. So the staff report has a table on page 2 outlining how the proposal conforms with that R1.1 zone. So lot coverage on lot A is 32.6% at the ground floor level, 26.1% at the second story level. That conforms with the zoning bylaw. Lot B, being the waterfront lot, has a ground floor lot coverage of 29.7%. That conforms with the zoning bylaw as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just if I could continue on that. So, I mean, I agree with some of my colleagues here that that I think it's time for the public to weigh in on this. I don't think, as to Councillor Rintoul's comment, you know, the devil's in what we get if it comes back. And I think the developer's done a great job of taking what's available and understanding that these lots have been subdivided, and they're not. That's not going to change. We're not going to put a duplex on any of these, and that we're looking at the best scenario for these. I too, like Councillor Rintoul, appreciate the design. I do think they fit within the neighborhood, and I think the developer's done the best they can with the land available in providing a design that will fit in there and stay within lot coverage and stay within lot height or building height, which I think is important because, as the proponent said, if they'd left it with a straight through thin strip, it could be a much higher building. So I think it's time for the public to weigh in on this. I'm not saying I agree with what's finally there, but I think it's time for the public to have a word. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duck. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I think since I was name checked earlier about the ESA, I thought there were additional clarifications for your point about that you know, they would be entitled to build higher if we deny these variances. And remember, I think some of my colleagues, especially if they're new, may not know, if we deny these variances, these developers are legally allowed to build to 2.5 stories. So they will squish them and make them go up if they need to, in order to make these something that they think they can sell to the market that would buy these houses. And I made my joke about being a bitter millennial because these are not market houses that are ever going to provide a benefit to the community. Waterfront property in this entire neighborhood does not provide a benefit to the community. It's actually a detriment to the community because it meant that seawalls were built, fill was pushed in, trees were cut down to build all of this existing neighborhood. The existence of those seawalls that hold all that existing property in, and the fact that there are no, all those trees were cut down, is degrading this beach habitat. It denies access to the public already. I don't think that would be a fair thing to judge this developer by. So what we have to look at is whether they're meeting their legal obligations for this property. And what happens is if we deny the variances that I felt their rationale was good to try and make these better for the neighborhood with the moving of the elevator shaft and things like that, what they can do instead is actually build within the red lot line, which means they can push that building way closer to the beachfront. They can legally do that because they subdivided this and got the permits before the ESA. And so that would be a worse environmental, potentially, impact. And so by having the variance and moving this house back, they're actually kind of preserving as much of the environmental value as they can. And what I'm concerned with is that if we're going to be looking at whether these, the alternative is not that a house doesn't get built here. Somebody spent a lot of money on these properties and they have to recoup their value. Otherwise, I think a company goes under, right? We have to look at, compared to what they could do on this lot, that would allow them to make the profit they must because of the amount they spent for this land, is it reasonable? And so I think at this stage, again, I think it's reasonable to go forward and for comment. And I'm concerned that if the variances get denied and that council wants to push for that, what we're going to get back is something much worse for the environment that is much higher. And that will be what we get, because the question isn't whether we think rich people should be allowed to build there, but rather whether they're doing, what's legal. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. But I'll turn to Mayor McNeil Smith, but not just before an observation, and that is that it's my understanding that this builder has worked in the community before and obviously has a reputation that they value and wants to, I think continue to earn the respect of the community. And so let's be hopeful that the end product here is through this process as we make something better for all parties. I'm going to turn to turn to Mayor McNeil Smith and then to Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the comments from colleagues with regards to if the variances are denied, that we could see a development with that is higher. But I'll quote from the staff report that with regards to height, that the permitted height in, as we heard earlier this evening in our 1.1 is 8 meters. And the house on lot A is 6.67 meters. Now, this is a question through you, Chair, to staff. Is that height would be to the roof line of the second story?
Ms. Verhagen?
The 6.67 meters would be to the height of the roof line of the second story?
Through the chair to the mayor, I'll have to check that measurement in a minute, but just some clarification on the maximum permitted height in the R1.1 zone. For a building with a roof pitch of 3 and 12 or less, that refers to the rise over the run of the slope. So a flat roof like this, the maximum height is 8 meters. If the roof pitch is greater than 3 and 12, the maximum height permitted by the zone is 9 meters. So if they proposed a pitched roof, it could be taller. So that's important to note when you're looking at permitted height. In terms of the height of this building, the report does say lot A height of 6.67 meters, lot B 7.62 meters in height. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess my point is that we understand the situation with regards to the rooftop access and why that is has the additional height it is, but the height of the structure itself. So if Lot A was to go to 2.5 stories, so for the benefit of the public, it is indicated in the staff report that this zoning does permit 2.5 stories. So in essence, that's a 3-level building with the first level partly underground or partly below grade, and then 2.5 stories are showing above grade. I believe there's an example in your neighborhood at the end of Wildford at the north end of Wildflower Place. I believe that's a 2.5 story building, fairly wide brown house.
So I'm not looking for feedback on that.
No,
but
sorry.
carry on.
Thank you, Chair. And so on Lot B, I'm seeing that it is 7.62 meters with a permitted height of 8 meters, still allowing what staff have said, that if it was a pitched roof, it would be able to go higher than that. But again, if a 2.5 story structure is built here, I don't imagine there's going to be a pitched roof on a 2.5 story building that is going to go to 9 meters. It's going to have to be to 8 meters. So I'm not sure that that denying the variance is going to be. I believe there could be more second story, but I don't believe it's going to be significantly higher than given what the heights of these two buildings currently are. Having said that, I'm going to change my perspective in terms of this resolution, and I will support it. We have a divided committee at the moment, and my thinking when we have a divided committee, it is probably beneficial for us to hear more from the public if that opportunity is available. And in this case, the staff recommendation is to go to hearing additional community input. I want to thank all the members of the public, the 5 that wrote letters on fairly short notice from when the agenda came out, and from the 2 or 3 additional speakers, apart from those letter writers who came this evening and spoke. We don't mean to put you through writing more letters and coming and speaking again, given that we're going to, if this continues to go forward, we'll be coming to at least another couple of meetings. But there could be some benefit or stronger sentiment within the neighborhood with regards to concerns over this application and these variance requests. I remain concerned, as I pointed earlier, but I think when we have a split committee, as we do on this one, that there could be some benefit to hearing additional public input. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll turn next to Councillor O'Keefe and then Councillor Novak.
Thank you. Question through you to staff, just for some clarity. I just wanted to confirm, is it the case that whether the ESA is applied to this development or not, that there is still a requirement for the development or the building to have a minimum of 20 meters from the natural boundary?
Through the chair to Councillor O'Keefe, the zoning bylaw requires a minimum setback of 7.6 meters to the natural boundary. I would have to review the policies in the OCP to see what you're referring to with the 20 meters. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so in terms of there being the building being able to be even closer to the waterfront doesn't seem to be an issue, that there's that standard amount of distance required away from the natural boundary, whether the ESA applies or not, is my understanding.
Yes.
And, yeah, okay, thanks. And I guess in regards to, I'm still fine in terms of rejecting the variance at this time. I don't know that I don't see the value in putting the community through having more discussion on this. I think I've got a pretty good sense of the sentiment, and it just doesn't seem worthwhile to me to put people through that process. So I'll continue to not support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am going to get into the gymnastics vein and flip on this. I think Councillor Duncan's arguments are very compelling, as are Mayor McNeil Smith's. And while I still don't feel that the project is the best possible use of the space, I also feel that we're caught between a rock and a hard place. If I look at the red boundaries on the screen, I kind of cringe at the thought of 2 homes being built within those setbacks. The setbacks are not ideal for that lot shape, and so from that perspective, the proponents are certainly justified in asking for those relaxations. And I realize that those setbacks are there for a reason, but at the same time, they're very different types of lot sizes. And in this particular case, I think if they built on 2 lots, again, if it were a single lot, it might be different, but if now there's 2 lots, I think the homes that would be built there might be even less in keeping with the community and might cause greater consternation for the neighborhood than the current proposal. So I think we should take it to the next level. I think we should hear more from the public, and once that's done, we'll be in a better position to make a final determination of whether we should go ahead with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Novak. Looking to committee, last call for any discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Vote is 5 in favor, 2 opposed. The motion is carried. Thank you very much, and my appreciation to members of the public who came out this evening. There's real continuity in the concerns that are there, and my hope is that the applicant and the presenter has heard where the focus of that concern is, and we look forward to hearing from members following the period of members of the community following this notice period. So with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All's in favor? Thank you. We're adjourned.